RISC-V open hours. So it's meant to be a kind of an informal biweekly meetup where we talk about things related to RISC-V, in particular, like the open source software projects around it and dev boards. And the idea is informal. Anyone's encouraged to participate. You don't need to have any slides or anything. You can feel free to, if you want to share the screen and show us something, just let me know. So we normally have them scheduled every 2 weeks. This is the last one I think we have on the calendar right now. So we'll be adding some more soon. So let's take a look. I think this is today was the only one listed. So we'll get more up there in the next week or two, but normally we have them bi-weekly and then they alternate time zones. So like today is the time zone that's good for, well, it's possible for people in Europe to join in the early evening, and it is the morning here on the west coast of the US where I am in Portland, Oregon. And then the other time zone that we do is evening here on the west coast of the US, and then morning in Asia. So the previous one was June 9th, and that was the one that was in the time zone that was good for the Asia morning. And it looks like Jim linked to the slides there for the previous session. So let me click on that. And I'll add that to the notes. And let me also put in a link to the Zoom chat for the slides that we're looking at right now. We just prepare a few introductory slides. The main thing is really to have discussion and people ask questions and discuss things related to RISC-V. So those, I just put in a link in the chat there that links to these slides. And then there was also the link there to the previous session. So I'll add that in here. Slides. All right. And then I am a RISC-V ambassador. You can find out more about the RISC-V ambassadors if you click on that link on the slide there. And I think it sounded like Wei Fu is also on the call. So he's also a RISC-V ambassador. So there's, I don't know, maybe there's, it looks like 16 of us now. Sometimes also Kira and Weiwu will join, especially the one that is in the Asia morning and America's evening. So let me pop in Wei Fu's name there. So just to catch people up on some things that have happened earlier this year, back in May, there was RISC-V Spring Week. And there were several talks that I thought were interested, especially related to the software ecosystem. So Mark is the CTO of RISC-V International, and Philip is the chair of the software committee, or as it's called the Software Horizontal Committee, which means it's kind of the overall committee for everything related to software in RISC-V International. So these were some talks I thought were interesting, and you can find the links in the slides there. And there was also the RISC-V Summit at the end of last year, and all those videos are online as well. So there's a lot of stuff to check out there. I've learned a lot from the RISC-V YouTube channel. And if you're new to joining this meetup, there's many ways to get involved with RISC-V International. So individuals and nonprofit organizations can join free of cost. So you can go onto the website and sign up as an individual. It doesn't cost anything to join as an individual. So let's click on that link here. So you'll just scroll down to the bottom here and you'll click on sign up as an individual member. Or if you're part of an organization, you can join as an organization. So for not-for-profit organizations like universities, you can join free of cost, but then for companies, there's different levels of sponsorship that you can join at. And then once you join, one of the good resources is the RISC-V technical wiki. So it's kind of a good way to get into all the information related into the technical work that RISC-V International is doing. So there's a lot of good links on here. Let me put this link into the chat here. So if there's anything you're wondering about with RISC-V International or the specifications, you can usually find links to that on the the technical overview page on the wiki. And then let's see here. So there's also like links to the technical organization chart. So how is RISC-V International structured? The technical working groups. So this is where a lot of the work on the specifications is done. Depending on your area of interest, there's probably a working group or a special interest group related to that. There's also a nice list here of recently ratified extensions, and that's always changing. So that's a good thing to keep an eye on. And you can find those, you can find all these links from that, that landing page, that technical landing page on the RISC-V wiki. Another one that I think is particularly of interest to people that are looking at open source software projects is this page here as a breakdown for different open source projects, what extensions, what RISC-V extensions they support and what the status is, including upcoming extensions as well. So I think this is a pretty good thing to look at if you're wondering what's going on in different open source projects with regards to their support for some of the different newer extensions. And let's see what else. So the other ways, once you become a member, you can join the working groups mailing list server. So many of the different groups like the task groups and the special interest groups, they all have mailing lists that they use. So the publics are all, the archives of the mailing lists are all public, but if you want to participate on the mailing list, you need to become a member, like I was saying, but you can do that free of cost. And then you can join the mailing list and participate on there. Also, many of those groups have meetings on either like a bi-weekly or a monthly basis. So if we take a look at the calendar here, I'll pop a link into the chat here. So you can see here, pretty much every day there's some sort of meeting from one of the special interest groups or task groups. So one of the ones that I try and attend, because it's pretty relevant to operating systems on RISC-V, is the platform meeting. So this stands for horizontal. There's a horizontal subcommittee. Basically just means this is the group that's working on the RISC-V platform specification, which is important to supporting rich operating systems like Linux on RISC-V. And then this one right here, which I guess is tomorrow, is the software horizontal committee. So this is the overall committee meeting for everything related to software. So if you can only attend one meeting and you're interested in software, this is a good one because all those other special interest groups and task groups will typically either Philip, who's the chair, will give an update, or the chairs of those individual groups will join and give updates. So that's a good one. And that one is actually about this time tomorrow, it looks like. And it's just a screenshot of the calendar. And so things that happened recently. So the last one, the last RISC-V open hours, I was not around, but I was because I was in France. So thanks to Weifu for, I believe, being on that one. And the reason I was over there was there was two conferences being held in Paris at the end of May and the beginning of June called Kernel Recipes, which is focused on the Linux kernel, and Embedded Recipes, which is about embedded systems in general. And there was actually two talks that related to RISC-V that happened there. So this first link here is to a blog post that I wrote that kind of recapped some of the talks and linked to them. So both of every day of the conference was live streamed. So you can go access all of those currently under the company that hosts the event. Let me stop this. Is named it's named in English. It looks like Hubstream. Let's stop there. So if you want to go view any of the live recordings or the live streams from the days, you can find those out under Hubstream. So eventually these 5 days of the conference will get broken up into individual talks. The last time it happened was 3 years ago before the pandemic. So they will eventually make nice little individual videos for each talk. So in a future open hours, I should have links specifically to my talk and Nicholas Petra's talk. But for now, I just have links to the timestamps in the video. So if you click on these links, you'll get my talk, If you click on this here, you'll get Nico's talk from the live stream. Let me add in stream videos here. So if anyone wants to, so if you're interested in Linux or embedded systems, it is a good thing to check out. There was, I think, probably 4 or 5 talks each day, and it was 5 days long. So my talk was about Linux on RISC-V, which I've given before, but this was the latest update. And Nicholas did a lot of the work in the Zephyr real-time operating system for the RISC-V support, especially the 64-bit RISC-V support. So Nico has done a lot of the work for the RISC-V support in Zephyr, and he gave a talk that was about a certain aspect of Zephyr, which is handling system calls, and some of the ways that was a issue on RISC-V and how he solved that problem. So I thought that one was pretty interesting. And then I gave kind of my latest update on Linux on RISC-V, which let's see here. The link to let me add a link here to the slides so people know. And I will drop this into the chat here, because I wanted to open this up briefly here to jump to the latest section on the kernel, because I think since we had, since I was last on Open Hour, some nice things have happened. So in particular for that All-Winner D1 SoC with the C906 core, the way that it handles the page-based memory types, so the ability to say like these pages of RAM are non-cached for I/O peripherals, that has now been merged into Linux 5.19, which will be coming out in maybe like 4 weeks. So the good news is that aspect will be good. There's still another aspect which is related to cache maintenance operations. Okay, here, this is what I was trying to get to. So I think we've gone through this before in Open Hours, but I wanted to jump to the latest stuff here. I'll drop the link in here again into the chat in case anyone didn't have it. And so this was already earlier this year in 5.16 and 5.17. And then 5.18 came out at the beginning of, in May, I believe. I forget the exact date, but this is the most recent version, and 5.19 is in release candidate right now. So one of the nice things out of this one is that perf, which allows you to do all sorts of interesting analysis of performance-related information, like profiling applications and figuring out where there's poor performance and what the sources are. Is a really powerful capability that you can do on x86 and ARM. And now, as of the currently released kernel, Linux 5.18, perf works the way you would expect on those other platforms. So that's quite nice. So potentially you can do all the interesting eBPF-based things that Brendan Gregg shows off with perf. This was another one that I found was interesting. So as the new extensions have been released, and many of the new extensions now have multiple letters in them, we got into the situation where the Linux kernel was not correctly parsing those ISA strings anymore. So as of 5.18, it does do that again now. Atish contributed a series of patches that allows the kernel to now correctly parse the ISA strings, so it can understand what those multi-letter ISA extensions are. But this was what I was most interested in talking about. So there's now been the 5.19 merge window is now closed, and we're in, I think, maybe the 3rd or 4th release candidate. So the nice thing that we have in there is the page-based memory types has been merged in. Let's see, I think I have that a little bit later here. Let's go forward here. Yes. So for those of you that weren't aware, this was ratified as part of the privilege spec at the end of last year. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's SVPBMT, and this basically allows us to describe the type of memory that a page in memory has. So specifically for I/O, such as peripherals that are on non-cache coherent interfaces, we have the ability to now say a page in memory is for I/O and it's not cacheable. So this is the sort of thing we need to be able to properly support devices that are on non-cache coherent interconnects that are going to be doing DMA, which was very relevant to that all-winner D1. So the all-winner D1 has several peripherals that don't work without that support. And so there's the official standard, and then the MMU that's in the all-winner D1 has its own format, and this patch series by Heiko supports both, and that has now been pulled in by Linus Torvalds, so that will be in the next version of Linux that'll be coming out. So I think that's quite exciting. And then the other thing that we need is cache management operations. So things like being able to clean a cache line. If we're going to be managing, if we're going to be having non-cache coherent devices doing DMA, we need to be able to do that as well. There's a patch series from Heiko as well that implements both the standard, which is the ZICBOM standard instructions, and then also the variants that T had implemented, which is in that C906 core that is in the all-winner D1 SoC. So this is actually not the latest revision anymore. Heiko is continuing to work on this. Let's see what the most recent one is. Yes, so most recent one was posted back on, the 19th, so 10 days ago. And then we dropped a link in here. So my understanding, and if anyone knows better, let me know. I think there's definitely people on here that know things about GCC, but I think the issue with this one is that Palmer, who's the maintainer for RISC-V in Linux, he wants to wait for these instructions to show up in the GCC, which I don't know, Jim, maybe you would know, but it seems like people refer to bin utils, but I'm assuming they mean basically GCC, right? So GCC plus bin utils having support for these instructions. So it seems like in these discussions, people usually say bin utils, but I'm assuming that is just another way of saying that it'd be supported in GCC. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but that's what I was taking this to mean, that we need to wait for that to show up there. So it also does seem like the official instructions do have support now, but the T-head instructions don't. So in theory, it looks like everyone's okay with how this is okay in theory with how we're going to handle these instructions in the kernel, but whether or not they'll be coded in the header, or if they'll be actually part of the tool chain. I don't know, Jim, if you have any other thoughts about that you want to pipe in.
No, I'm not very active at the moment. Been taking time off.
Okay. But you know, when people say bin utils, that's meaning like GCC as well, right? That you need support for these new instructions in bin utils?
GCC has very limited cache support. So
Okay.
Sorry. Is that someone say something? I haven't heard anything.
I think
bin utils is not. I think it's in the tool chain, but it's not including in GCC. I don't know if you if I answer the question. Please correct me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Jim was speaking, but his mic level was really low. So I think maybe some people couldn't hear. I had to turn up the volume a lot, but yeah, I was just wondering because in these discussions about the cache maintenance operations, I've been seeing the reference to wanting to have an updated version of binutils that would have these instructions in it. But then, you know, I'm not too familiar with how compilers work internally, but I was kind of wondering, do we just need a new binutils or do we also need a new GCC? Because I'm assuming this was about being able to.
Most of the time, if there is a new instruction, GCC need to support it to translate to this new instruction, and also binutils need to help to introduce translate this instruction to the binary code. So we need both. But sometimes GCC will upgrade earlier, and especially sometimes when I using the latest Fedora binutils, it cannot compile the latest kernel for RISC-V in Uboot for RISC-V. So we need to have some patch on the software. So we need both support the new instruction.
Okay, and I guess it was Jim made a comment that this is about the assembler, and the assembler is part of binutils. Okay, so that makes sense to me. So they because in the kernel source code we really just have inline. We normally would have inline assembly, right? So it's about being able to use instructions that the assembler would recognize in the kernel source, right? Versus the way it was currently being done, which if we scroll down here, we can see probably, but it was like basically just, so I guess the quick way to do it is to just encode the instructions here, right? As just the hexadecimal value, but then the correct way to do it would be to be able to have the assembly instructions, to just use assembler pseudo instructions, right? And then the binutils assembler would then translate that into the correct opcodes. Because this is kind of doing it the, I guess the hacky way, where we're just hard coding an opcode into the binary, right? Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so the binutils is
answer the question.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, I don't know how much you've been looking at this, but it looks like in theory, people are okay with the strategy here. It's just how the instructions get handled, right? But like the idea of being able to handle the t-head variants, it seems like that's not going to be a problem, which is good. So I've been quite happy to see that it looks like it's not going to be an issue to support these t-head variants.
Yes, and I heard from Goran, and he told me it seems like can use the upstream kernel to run D1. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. Because I go back to like when we had Linux plumbers last year, and it seemed very unclear how this issue would get worked out, and it's quite cool. It's quite nice to see that we have the page-based memory types are now going to be in 5.19, and it looks like this one's really just waiting on an external dependency, which is related to the assembler. So that's quite encouraging to see. Do you know of any other?
And also this will make the C910 can run upstream kernel.
That's good too.
And even the newer version of C9 blah blah blah, you know.
Yeah, right. So it would basically be anything from that generation that has a t-head core in it, right? So basically anything that's already being fabbed, right? Because these standards weren't passed until December, right? So I'm assuming it'll probably be a year until we see chips, right, that have the RISC-V standard for the instruction, right? For like, we probably won't see anything, I imagine, for a year that has the official CMO instructions or the official SVP BMT, right? Because those weren't ratified until December, right? So I'm assuming it takes some time to get those added into designs. So that's quite good. I think that we have a way of handling the vendor variant in Linux. Are there any other patches that you've seen on the list recently that you think are important? I mostly was paying attention to the all-winner based stuff, but it was kind of neat. It looks like Renaissance has this RZ5 SoC, which is a RISC-V SoC from Renaissance. It looks like they've been submitting a lot of stuff for that one. I think it's actually someone at Renaissance. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is a developer from Renaissance that's been doing a lot of work to upstream support for their SoC, which is good. Has there been anything on Vector recently? Do you know, like the Vector patches? Because Vector is ratified, right? So I'm wondering, Linux, I guess, still hasn't gotten support for it yet. Let's see here. Okay, so it looks like the last one was in May. Do you follow that one at all, Weifu? The Vector ISA support?
No, not really.
Okay.
I haven't noticed that.
So I guess that's a minor aspect of the T-head parts is they do have Vector, but it's the earlier version. Versus this is trying to add support for the ratified 1.0 version. Which I'm wondering if there are any chips yet that have the ratified spec. Probably not, because it was only ratified in December, right? So there's probably not any chips out there yet with it. Have you seen any that have the 1.0?
No, not really.
Yeah.
All we know is just using a
Yeah.
0.7, and
Yeah.
sometimes if you wanted to use that, you need the customer customer toolchain. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense too, because it's like, well, it was only ratified in December, so you probably wouldn't see things yet. It does make me, if I go back here to the RISC-V Spring Week, I think one thing that I'm very curious about is Intel gave a presentation during the RISC-V Spring Week. And I'm really curious to see if we'll see a development board from Intel this year. Let me see. I think the slides are on here somewhere. Intel. Yes. Here, I'll drop the link in here. So I remember seeing this, and then the slides were pretty interesting. So this person's from the Intel Foundry Services. So they basically want people to get their chips fabbed with Intel. And I guess to show that off, they've been doing a RISC-V design on a pretty advanced node, like something like 7 nanometers. I think my Zoom windows are probably clipping the side here, but let's see here. They call it, the name of the project is Horse Creek. Yes. So this was what they were talking about, is that they're going to have this chip called Horse Creek that's going to have the Sci-Fi P550 in it. And that there's going to be development boards with this, which sounded pretty promising. So I'm quite curious to see what will happen with this. Looks like they're also working with Ventana and Esperanto and Andes. So I think that'll be quite interesting to see what happens there. What is in the Sci-Fi P550? Let's see. So it is, oh, it's not Vector. It's bitmanip. Okay. So this one would have bitmanip, but it wouldn't have vector. So Shane was saying that the Horse Creek boards might be the replacement for the High-5, the most recent one, which they already discontinued. So that will be interesting to see. I don't know. Have you heard anything about Intel, Wei-Fu?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
You can check your Skype. I sent some information when you
Okay.
finish that. You can
Okay.
post it.
Is it something you wanted to share on the open hours? Or you meant after?
Not really. You can
Okay.
post that and
Okay.
I can
Okay.
add something if I know something. Yeah.
Okay. Was there any other? So let me see. Let me click on your slides from last time. See if there's anything in there that we should bring up. I think you talked about the Tokyo conference, right, in there.
Yeah.
Let's see.
But it mainly focus on Fedora 36, which we have finished, and we have kind of finished, and the package number will be nearly 70% of all the Fedora package. So we are temporarily stopped at that and trying to sort out all the deployment of Koji and try to make a new cluster, a QMO cluster for building a more package. So temporarily just stop there. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So this was the slide, right? From last
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Okay.
Last time. Yes. Actually, it's not up to date. They actually add something for Gen 2 and Arch Linux, but yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing well the next time we have this in the China in the Asia morning, right? And
Yes,
we'll probably get
yes.
some updates, yeah. Which I need to check with Megan. She's gonna so Megan from RISC-V International is gonna be putting up the future open hours dates because we've been discussing what would work there. So well the people that have let me pull up the open hours website. So I'm assuming most of you got here because you had RSVP'd on community.risc5.org and you should see new events pop up on here sometime soon. So we'll have more. So let's see, where's the, okay, so this is the main link for open hours. So I believe if you are a member of open hours, you should get a notification when we put the new dates up there, which should be sometime soon. We usually have about a 2-week cadence. So I'm guessing probably most people in here got to this because you're already a member. But if anyone's watching and you aren't, you can just go to community.risc5.org and you can join the open hours group and you'll get notified when the next ones come up. All right, let me flip back over here. Was there anything else from the previous slide deck, Wei-Fu, that you think we should pull up?
That's all the things we have right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we have about 8 people. Did anyone have any questions or other things they wanted to bring up? Wei-Fu does a lot with Fedora. So if anyone has any questions about Fedora or really any RISC-V questions in general, we're happy to discuss.
Actually, for us, we are looking for a chip which is a PC level, and we can put it into the Fedora cluster for the builder.
Right.
We just need a chip. Actually, we can design a board and making a development board in China, but even we can customize it to be can be remote controlled from remote controlled by BNC. We can integrate BNC, but yeah, actually some chip like this. And also there's a news in China today. Someone post a Roma pre-order website, which is it will be the first laptop RISC-V laptop in made in the world, actually in the world. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can check the Skype link, or maybe I can put a link in the chat.
That's interesting because I had put it in the Zoom chat because I had been seeing the chair of the software committee when he gave his talk in Paris. He had been speculating about whether or not we would see a RISC-V laptop sometime this year.
Since I contact with the boss of that company, and it seems they will coming soon, and you will see the formal news very soon.
Cool. The world's first RISC-V laptop.
Thanks for sharing that. On a somewhat similar note, Pine64 just teased yesterday that they will be producing a new RISC-V baseboard soon.
Is there a link for that one?
Yeah, I'm trying to dig that up right now. It was in an email, so I'm trying to get it over here.
Oh, maybe the June updates. Let's see here.
Yeah, that sounds right. So it's like one of their most recent updates they just posted about. There you go. So that they've got a board, and they had a they do this thing where they do whatchamacallit, what do you call it? If you go to the bottom, like a giveaway.
Yeah.
But they have,
Oh, okay.
so they're going to give away a copy of the board to the first person who can solve their riddle about its name.
Oh, okay. Is this it? This one? I guess it's the
Yeah, I think that's the riddle. And then if you solve it, you get
Pine64 already made the ARM-based laptop, which using I forget about the operation system. There's a Linux distro on that, and it's also I guess it's RPM based. Yeah. So what they need to do, just using another RISC-V chip to replace the RK chip. So that's something. Is someone showing this message information? Please go on. I just randomly say something. Yeah.
yeah. So it looks like I was just putting the links in here in case people are looking at the notes later. So it looks like if there's a poem here that allow you to potentially guess what it is, and they're saying more information next month. So yeah, I know in general right now it's a very difficult time to get things made. So good to see people are still forging ahead. So it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of details on, I was trying to see here on this. Say like the text looks a little weird to me, but going back to the laptop. So doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of information, but the 16 gigabytes quad core. Interesting.
the fact that the secure enclave is an ARM chip is kind of
yeah
cute.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like it also makes me I'm wondering which which RISC-V core it might be. There doesn't seem to be any good signs of that, given what they've written here. But yes, I agree. Having ARM IP in it does make a little bit more curious as to who did the design. Interesting. I'd not heard of either Fuwei or Weifu. Had you heard of either of these organizations before, or was this first time you heard
Yes,
of them?
I heard this company, and I think 2 years ago. 2 years
Okay.
ago. Yeah. So they are focused on toolchain or some static code analysis or something. So but they have a very strong software team, and they help some company to make you know, the very famous distro running on RISC-V.
So they do security. Interesting. So their thing is based on security testing, and it looks like they do consulting around security related sort of things. Interesting. Not who we probably would have expected the first RISC-V laptop to come from. Quite interesting.
Yeah, that's today's news in China.
Yeah, that's cool. How do you find out about these things? Are there like certain chat rooms or things like that you're in, or?
Actually, we will post the picture.
Okay.
Post this picture in the group chat. So yeah.
Okay, cool. What is it, WeChat, or what do you use for your group chats normally?
Yes, WeChat.
WeChat, okay. That just reminds me, I don't think I ever set up WeChat. My phone broke in like March, and I don't think I ever reinstalled it. I should do that. That's cool. Nice. Did you fill out the RSVP? I'll have to, or the contact form.
Yes, I sign out the phone and try to get one. Yeah, but you know, it's a laptop. I'm not sure if I can afford one.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how expensive it is.
In this situation, in this how to say, this supply chain, I think
Yeah.
it will be expensive.
Yeah, right. It's difficult to get things made. Interesting. I was just filling out the form and I put in my Gmail and it said no personal email allowed. I'll try a different address. We'll see. Interesting. I think this would be pretty interesting so I have a friend in Berlin. I used to live in Berlin, and he created this laptop called the Reform, which is an open source hardware laptop. And currently it has, it's built in a way that you add in system on module as the CPU. So it's currently an ARM Freescale, but he definitely wants to do a, let me see a better website, the actual website for it. He actually wanted to build one with RISC-V, but of course, need to have a suitable either a chip that you can buy or a system on module with a chip that you could buy. But I think that'd be pretty exciting if he could do this, because the nice thing about this one is it's all open hardware. All the firmware is open source, so everything about the design is totally open. But right now it's limited to a either an ARM NXP part or an FPGA. So that would be cool if he was able to get a RISC-V module to put in it.
That's neat.
Yeah, I guess this is I'll just put the main link in there. Yeah, so it's pretty cool. In like the mechanical design, like is all open stuff like the keyboard controller and the power management and stuff. They're all running like open source firmware. So it's I think the only thing that they have to have is there's a blob for the DDR4 training that you have the early bootloader has to load, but it's kind of the case for any advanced system with DDR4, since all of the DDR4 IP usually needs to have these training data from the vendor so it can figure out the timings when it boots. But other than that, it's all open. So I think the ideal thing would be to get something that it was a RISC-V chip to put in there, but I think it's still early days for having RISC-V SoCs that would be powerful enough for a laptop. So I'm quite excited to see what will happen with this. Well, I guess it's called the Roma. Yeah. Or the Horse Creek from Intel, maybe.
I was about to say the unlimited was probably close to being reasonable for a laptop. Pretty decent.
Yes.
So I'm guessing the Horse Creek, since that's technically an upgrade, although I wouldn't call it a replacement, is probably going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, so the unmatched, the one that came out last year, I think it is. That one's pretty good, especially since it has the M.2 slots for like NVMe, SSD. It has PCI Express. I think the main problem there was just cost. But I mean, you could definitely, I mean, it was a mini ITX form factor, so you could definitely like make a little custom portable computer with it. But I guess in addition to well, for a laptop, that's not too expensive, but I guess the bigger issue was the availability, and like they struggled to get many units made. So I can understand why they decided to give up trying to get more made. It's a difficult time. Like I work on some hardware projects, and it's like you can't say the design's finished until you have all of the parts bought and at the assembler, because it's like it's always like when you think you got everything and then you realize, oh no, there's this one part we can't get and we have to change the design. So it's pretty difficult these days. Cool. Any other things people had questions or wanted to bring up? The Pine 64 was good to see. Good to see they're still doing stuff, trying to do stuff with RISC-V.
Oh, I have a question, Drew, and other
Yeah.
people. So since I'm more on the application level, so unfortunately, the C++ assembly is just not mine. It's just still spend some time. I noticed that a new language called Rust right now is going to Linux kernel. Do you think the Rust language is supported in on this RISC or not?
Yes, yeah, it definitely is. So there's I think pretty much full support for Rust and RISC-V. And in fact, sometimes he joins. He's not on today, but Daniel is his first name. Check his last name. But he works on a Rust-based bootloader for RISC-V. So it's called. Let me see here. I think it's called Orboot is the name of it. So this is a bootloader that is written in Rust, and he works on. I think this is it. So this is a bootloader that's written in Rust, and he posts a lot about it. Let me see if I can. Orboot makes 5. If I search for this, it'll probably come up. It's Daniel with an M. he had talked about it before. But what I'm actually, the way I know about him is there is actually a Telegram group where there's a lot of RISC-V stuff that's discussed. It was started for the All-Winner D1, but it ends up being a place where a lot of people talk about stuff. So let me pull up my slides real quick here, because he is a really good person to ask about Rust on RISC-V. So there is definitely a lot of strong interest from the bootloaders is one thing with Orboot. Yes, yeah, I think that's right. Let me try that. Ah, yes. So here he is on Twitter. So he does a lot of work with Rust on RISC-V. So he's definitely a good person to ask. And there is actually a Telegram group. Yeah. Oh, it looks like he also does things on Twitch with his development. So another good thing to check out there. But he does the first person that comes to mind when I think of Rust on RISC-V. So
Yeah, I've seen this guy.
yeah, he does a lot of stuff. Also trying to, so there is, I don't know if Wei-Fu, if you have the link handy, but there is a All-Winner D1 RISC-V group, which is just good for general RISC-V stuff. It was originally meant to be a chat for people that were trying to
Is that a Telegram group?
yes, the main line for this one, but I always struggle to find the link for it. I'm in it. I always struggle to find the link to it. Looks like my own slide is the thing that comes up when I search for it. So let's see here, Telegram. Here it is. Yeah, so this is, I'll put the link in here. This is a link that'll take you to the Telegram group. And it's good for general RISC-V stuff as well. Daniel's really active in there along with some other people. So it's not just about the All-Winner D1. So let me add that into here. And it looks like Jim also added a link there too, or no, Shane did to.
Oh yeah, I was just pointing out that they consider it, Rust itself considers RISC-V Linux tier 2 support.
Okay.
Actually, there's a few different builds, but I've used it, and that's actually what I'm building stuff in right now. And it says tier 2 is not guaranteed to work, but it's guaranteed to build. But in my experience so far, everything's worked. So maybe I'm just lucky.
Cool. Right. So there are different levels of officialness. I mean, kind of the same thing for a lot of stuff, like with Fedora, right? Like it works, but it's not considered an official Fedora yet. So I think a lot of the RISC-V stuff is like that right now, where it's like it works, but it's maybe not a top tier official support yet.
Yeah, if you're interested, like, jump in on it, because it's the combined interest of everybody that will eventually push it to tier 1.
Yeah.
I mean, for comparison, like ARM 32-bit ARM isn't tier 1 either. Only 64-bit ARM is tier 1. So that's just a matter of interest from the community. So.
Okay.
You just talk about SBI bootloader group, and there's another project called Rust SBI, and I think I posted.
Ah, yes.
Yes. There's a it seems it can work on QMO, and maybe people can have a try. Yeah, and also talking about Rust, and it's become more and more important for not just for kernel, but also for the Linux distro. When we built Fedora 36, we find out Rust is the Rust language, and the module and the support is must to have in Fedora 36. So we're trying to build more and more Rust package, Rust module package for that. And actually, we already has nearly the latest Rust support in Fedora 36 for RISC-V.
Cool. That's great.
I have another question actually.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I'm actually looking at this document from Microsoft, Microsoft execution format is called PE format. I noticed that there is a machine tab. You can scroll down. That's a very long document. You can scroll down and find the machine types, or you can just search RISC-V. I found out the RISC-V is listed on the PE format. Does that mean that the PE format is going to support it on RISC-V? Do you have any news from that?
I've not heard of anything, but that is interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I see what you mean there. Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of like, so this is similar to something like ELF, right, where it has different types of things that it supports. So yeah, that's a good question there. If they've added that into the format, are they experimenting with it? I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I don't know if anyone else has heard anything. But well, Microsoft, they supported what, Alpha a long time ago, that Windows NT ran in Alpha. And then of course they also run on ARM now. So I guess you never know. Though this does look like a pretty extensive list of things. I'm wondering, did Windows run on, was there Windows on all of these things? Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where like it might not mean anything, or maybe it does, right?
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, like it's one of those things where it's like maybe it means nothing, because I also see like the old Hitachi, you know, stuff on here. So maybe it means maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. I mean, you know, there's also like gaming consoles and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, so PE is like a format, right, of an executable. So it could be like, it could be used on things that aren't Windows. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, true.
So I mean, I also see this one's pretty new too, right? This one's from China, the Lung Arch. I think it's from China. I saw it just got added to Linux, so I don't know. It's interesting, but it is a interesting thing to speculate about if there's a RISC-V Windows somewhere deep within Microsoft, somewhere.
Okay. Since this is a software meeting, I'm just curious. That's for a software development, right? So the whole ecosystem, how you guys are using something like what IDE you guys are using? Do you have any debugger or profiler, something like that?
Yes. So I mean, for me, I mostly focus on Linux development. So pretty much the normal tools that we use on are either x86 or ARM. So GCC and GDB, they all have RISC-V versions. Though I should bring up here on RISC-V.org, there is this thing called the Exchange, which is meant to be a place that you can list things. So there is a software category on here, which let's see, where's software? So this is meant to be kind of a list of all the different types of software, and then there are things on the side here like IDEs and debugging. A lot of it you'll see is from commercial vendors, but there's also open source projects listed as well. So let me drop that in here. So that's one place to look. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts, but
Yeah,
IDEs.
If you're doing Linux, then yeah, it's just Linux. But if you're doing something lower level like boot code or something like that, and you build like a development and testing environment with QEMU, which can emulate like a couple of Sci-Fi chips and stuff like that. There's some specific debugging options there for like lower level code.
Oh, I see.
I tend to test all my stuff out in QEMU kind of before I put it on my board or something like that.
Yeah, and yeah, so QEMU is like a really popular option for all sorts of development. In fact, I think a lot of the development of Linux has actually been done on QEMU, especially since there wasn't that much hardware that has been available, especially not until recently. So QEMU is quite useful for all sorts of development. In terms of IDEs, I know on this list you'll see here, let's flip back over. A lot of the vendors have their own. So Andes makes RISC-V cores, they have their own. And I know I've not used that. I have used the Sci-5 one. Let's see here. Yes, so
Yeah,
Sci-5 has one. Yeah, Sci-5 has one called Freedom Studio, which I believe is based on Eclipse, but they have things set up pretty nicely so you can go through their tutorials. But I think it just depends on also what vendors you're using. So if you're using a core from a particular vendor, they'll probably have an IDE, probably based on Eclipse, and then some other tools. But from the open source world, I would say most things you'd expect when doing development are there. So like GDB and Clang and those sorts of things all exist now.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Sure. And if people haven't seen this before, this was an effort over the last couple of years from RISC-V International to try and figure out a way to list all the different things that are available in terms of hardware and cores and software across like both commercial vendors and then also open source projects. So you can submit things to this. So it's meant to kind of be a somewhat of a curated list, but then hopefully people will submit things if they aren't on the list. So it's also a way to like find different cores and these sorts of things. So it does seem like it's mostly the commercial vendors that bother to submit things, but you can also, if there's open source projects that you know of that you don't see there, you can submit them as well. Did anyone have any other questions or things they wanted to bring up?
So after this, so I've been a community member of RISC-V for some long time now, but I haven't really done a whole lot with the community, mostly just kind of experimented on my own and stuff like that. And I also don't have a job that directly relates. I work on Kubernetes networking software, so I'm pretty far away from this stuff, at least in my day-to-day. So this stuff's all kind of personal.
Okay. Yeah.
So eventually I think that'll probably change. Like it'll at least be important for me to build my software on RISC-V. I know that's going to happen eventually. But I guess my point more is like, from that perspective, is there any good meetings, just anything just for, so like, and I do Rust. That's my biggest thing is I do like a lot of Rust and RISC-V stuff. Are there good meetings? So you pointed out like one of the meetings was just everything development, but groups for, I don't know, I'm trying to find where I could start getting more involved upstream because I'm having a little bit more time for that lately. And like, instead of just being all downstream kind of playing with things.
Yes, well, in terms of RISC-V International, there is a group on, I think it's called, let's see here. There's a group for runtimes and toolchains, which can be relevant to that. There we go, technical overview. So I wanted to see if I could find that here. Let's see here. Maybe the calendar is an easier way. Let me just go back to the calendar here.
Yeah, I had never found that calendar before, so I did add that.
So there should be a toolchains and runtime one. So there's a couple of different groups. Actually, I'm realizing now, if we go to the mailing list server, that's maybe, and that's kind of the main way that I look at these groups is the, let's see here, I had the link in the slides here. The next slide here, they call it the working groups mailing list server, but it's essentially just, it's a mailing list server. And you can see subgroups on here. And I think there's one on tool chains. Yeah, so there's a tool chains and runtimes subcommittee. So this is a good one to look at. And I think you'll see that they do have meetings on the calendar there. So the other thing I would suggest is let's see, what are we? We're in June here. So this is, so it is an active mailing list. Probably things like Rust might come up in this group here, since it's about tool chains and runtimes. I would suggest joining RISC-V International. Have you done that as an individual so far?
Yeah, like years ago.
Okay, cool. So then you'll have no problem. You can log in to the server and you can also join meetings if you want to. But outside of that, I was thinking, you mentioned the cloud-based stuff, and one of the other ambassadors, his name is Carlos, and he works for Red Hat, and he does a really good job of talking about how to get some of these things running related to RISC-V on cloud platforms. So that could be another area to look at. I'm trying to see here. He has a thing that he talking about like how to run things like Kubernetes on RISC-V. I know he's done things like that. It's because he's, I'll just paste this link in here, because that's what he does at Red Hat. He's like a cloud architect at Red Hat. So he's gone through trying to get all those sorts of things to run on RISC-V. So that might be of interest. And I think this I always get confused by this K8S, which is, I guess, just Kubernetes. So I guess this K3S is mini Kubernetes, I guess it is. So
yeah, K8 is like a weird abbreviation for Kubernetes. K3 is a specific distribution of Kubernetes that is kind of a lighter weight one.
Okay. So this stuff he's doing might be of interest to you, since he does all the cloud stuff professionally, and then kind of has been trying to get that stuff running on RISC-V. Let me go back to his GitHub here, because he's also.
I just forked and starred that, and I'll take a look around those things.
Yeah, he's also on Twitter. He's really active on Twitter, so you can ask him questions on there. And he's in Brazil, so I'm not sure if these open hours work out too great for him, but you should be able to get in touch with him, because there's probably things he's working on that you might be able to collaborate on. The other person that I think of is he does a lot of great posting about RISC-V low-level stuff, but he is actually also a cloud person professionally, is Daniel Mangum.
Mangum, I know him. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so he does a lot of really cool. He does all this great documentation and tweets on like low-level RISC-V stuff. But then I also know his main thing is like cloud related. So it's interesting to see like the crossover there. And I think he's also someone who's trying to figure out more ways to get RISC-V involved in his professional work. The main thing we're missing is really RISC-V systems that are worthy of running these cloud stacks on, right? So
yeah, we're missing servers. I mean, I know there's like the supercomputer and stuff like that one group's working on, but we're missing servers. Far away now, though. The momentum.
I agree. Yeah, I think maybe. Well, that's why I'm really interested in the Intel stuff, because I saw also on the Intel slide that they had the startups that are working on server stuff. So Ventana and Esperanto, they're all doing stuff in the RISC-V server space. So depending on what they're doing, there might be that need there, so we need the graviton of RISC-V to come out, right? So it makes these things more practical, right, to get working.
Yeah, thank you for those links. It's very helpful.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm hoping so there's a couple So at the RISC-V Summit last year, there was people from these companies like Ventana and what's the other one that's new? Rivos is another one, RIVOS. But a lot of them, they don't talk too much about what they're doing yet. So I'm hoping at some point, maybe the RISC-V Summit this December, we'll get more details, because I'm hoping that they have these really cool systems that they're working on will unveil soon, but I think they're not talking about that yet, so we'll have to see. Cool. Let me save this transcript here before I lose it. So I know I'll add a link into the slides to the transcript. And normally we'll update the meetup page on community.riscvi.org with the links. Cool. Well, it was definitely good to get some back and forth discussion going on. It's kind of the main goal here with the open hours. Cool. Well, if
Yeah,
there's,
thank you for your time.
yeah, no problem. Well, yeah, I guess if there's nothing else, we can wrap up for today. I think an hour and 20 minutes is pretty good. So we don't have the next date right now, but it'll probably be in about 2 weeks. And if you're on the group, you'll get notified when we add the upcoming dates in. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and hope to see y'all again next time.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.